Welcome back, everybody, to part 3 of my MLS Explained Football Manager 2024 tutorial, Redone. Okay, today I'll be talking about the different types of allocation money, roster rules, registration rules, and guaranteed contracts. Okay, now I wanted to make a note that this only happens in Football Manager, and I will cover that in just a second. Allocation money. Each year, the league gives teams additional money that is available to use in addition to the salary cap funding. Now, this is what happens in Football Manager only. Each year at the start of a new season, approximately January 9th, usually it's after the MLS Cup. It could be a day after, all the way through like January 9th or 10th. Okay, allocation money is automatically taken out of your incoming allotted money. Once again, in Football Manager only. I don't need to rant. You guys have heard me enough, but it's really crappy how the game does this before you even have to register your players. So as an example, in my St. Louis City save from a couple years ago, right here, it says St. Louis has spent $1.6 million out of general allocation money to buy down the cap impacts of the following 3 players. Remember, I talked about Berkey and Nielsen, how they didn't have DP contracts, they had senior contracts. They should have used TAM number 1 to buy it down, okay, to make it compliant to the max salary budget charge, and then it should be up to me if I want to use general allocation money. Okay, so they screwed that up. They screwed that up big time because this doesn't happen. All right, you have until registration compliance date to get your monies all situated. So the fact that they take it out like this automatically, it's ridiculous. But I don't want to talk about it because it just pisses me off. Okay, also they used TAM to buy down these contracts. No, that's not what TAM is used. Oh, God. Anyway, we're going to get into all the different types of allocation money here in just a second, as soon as I calm down. Okay, I'm going to talk about TAM, or targeted allocation money, first. In 2023, they give you $2,720 worth of targeted allocation money per club. Okay, the MLS has decided in its infinite wisdom that they are no longer going to use targeted allocation money, and they are slowly filtering it out by decreasing it by a percentage each year and increasing GAM. Now, GAM and TAM increase every year anyway, just like salaries and the salary cap and everything else. Okay, inflation, everything goes up. All right, but what they're doing is, instead of the normal increase, they're increasing the amount that they're decreasing TAM, if that makes sense. So maybe in 10 years, we won't even have TAM anymore, and everything that TAM you can use it for is going to be GAM. So it makes it a little bit easier. But for now, here's what you can use TAM for. Okay, designated player buy down. Designated player buy down. I had a brain fart for a minute. I'm sorry. Basically, you can convert a designated player contract to a senior contract. And I have on the next slide here, I have an example to show you. Okay. You must sign a DP immediately. So you can't just buy down a DP contract and make it a senior just because you're going to have a spare DP slot. It doesn't work like that. It's in conjunction with signing a new DP. You're only allowed to do this once per year. However, there are a lot of exceptions and restrictions to that. If you come into a team that just signed its 3rd designated player and you come and take them over, you will not be able to use this because you have to have all your DP slots full the entire season. Does that make sense? So if you come into a team and you have, like, I'm taking over DC United now. They only have 1 DP, Benteke. Okay, I could sign 2 more DPs, but I can't sign a 3rd because I can't use the buy down. Now, next season, I could use the buy down. Okay, so you're allowed to do it once a year as long as you meet that exceptions. Okay, now you can sign a new player whose salary is more than the max salary budget charge, and I'm going to call this MSBC. You can re-sign an existing player whose salary is more than the MSBC. You can sign homegrown players to their first Major League Soccer contract, and that's not an FM. I don't know why it's not, because I sign a lot of homegrown players to their first contract. It'd be nice to use TAM with that, instead of my payroll. But it's not in the game. The max salary that you can use for a homegrown player is $200,000. You can also use TAM during contract negotiations to buy down the initial salary. When you offer a contract, and if it's read out in the bottom left corner, you're going to have an option that says additional money. And when you click on that, you can see you can use GAM or you can use TAM. If you don't have any available, it won't let you use it. Okay, but you can do that. You cannot trade TAM, and that's in Football Manager only. In real life, you can trade it. St. Louis traded a lot of it. All right, and it does not carry over to the next year. So there's a lot of differences between TAM and GAM, and I'm going to get into GAM in just a sec. Before I talk about GAM, I wanted to show you about the DP buy down. Okay, right here. What happens is you go sign a player. You know, you pay the transfer fee. You're offering him a contract. He wants a DP contract, and you're like, oh crap, I don't have any. But you know you're within your year where you could use it with that exception. So you go ahead and offer it to him. And then when he wants to sign a contract, you're going to get this message here in your inbox, and it says, the proposed transfer that will see Paslak joining as a DP cannot be finalized because we don't have enough vacant slots. And the title is the transfer hit a snag. Now it also says in order to complete the deal, St. Louis needs to spend $650,000 from their TAM to demote an existing DP to a senior contract. Now this is not just a set fee. Okay, that's not what it is at all. Now, if you remember, Lowen was on a DP contract, but he was making double what the max salary budget charge was on his DP contract. The DP contract that gets bought down to a senior is always the cheapest out of all of them. So if you're paying one person $5 million, one person $3 million, and one person $2 million, okay, you're going to use up roughly 1.45 TAM to buy it down to the max budget charge, okay? So it always takes the cheapest one for the buy down, and it always, that number's never the same, is what I'm trying to say, okay? And then it says, he will now be on a senior contract. Now here's the kicker. Senior contracts, you're not allowed to have substitution fees or clauses or anything like that. It's just a standard set salary. That's it. However, from the DP buy down, that contract will still list them. That's where it gets interesting. It still lists them because it's technically still allowed because it was a buy down. All right. But I just wanted you to see that example here for a DP buy down, and you'll know what happens there. Now, if you're not allowed to do it, when he gets ready to sign his deal, you're going to get an email in your inbox that's going to say this transfer has been canceled because you didn't have enough slots. And that's how you know that the DP buy down, you can't use it that season. Okay. All right, on with GAM, General Allocation Money. Once again, this increases each year. In 2023, currently it sits at $1,900 per club. And I already covered the increases and decreases and stuff. The uses for GAM, it's mainly for players' salary. Okay, that's what it's used for. It can be used during contract negotiations, also to buy down salaries, just like TAM. Okay, now clubs will receive additional TAM. Oh, crap, I messed that up. They'll receive additional GAM for the following. And I'm sorry, guys. I told you I was doing this quickly. Okay, so just because you start out with $1,900 a year does not mean that's what you're going to end up with. I'm sorry. It's not 1,900. It's 1,900. God, I'm nuts. I'm losing my mind. Okay, but you get GAM throughout the year. All right. Failure to qualify for the MLS Cup, depending on how bad you did in the season, if you finished dead last in the Supporter Shield, you're going to get more GAM than the team that finished above you. Okay, but it's kind of like a compromise. The league wants to stay competitive, and they figure giving people more GAM, you can sign better players to more expensive contracts and buy them down. That's the whole point to it. All right, anytime you transfer a player to a non-MLS club, first off, the MLS owns all contracts, remember, the MLS rights. So if you sell a player for $10 million, the MLS is going to get their cut. They're going to take at least 25% of that. And then the rest of that, depending on how much transfer retention percentage you have, the rest of that goes into your transfer kitty. Okay, so they take 25%, so you're getting $7,500,000. Okay, but if you only have 50% of that going into your transfer kitty, you're only going to get like almost 3.8 million instead of 10. Okay? Because they take money, the MLS will give you a percentage of that back as GAM. Okay, I've received as little as 15,000 up to 8 million in GAM before because of transfers. If you sell a wonder kid for 50 million, you're going to get probably 8 to 10 million in GAM back at the end of the year for next season. So that's a good thing. All right. If you qualify for the Champions League, you get GAM. It's just a set amount. Losing a player in the expansion draft. Now, this is only during an expansion year. But if one of your players is taken in an expansion draft, MLS will reward you with GAM for losing that player. If you're a non-expansion team in an expansion year, you're giving a little bit more GAM also. And this is because expansion teams get almost double the amount of GAM when they first come into the league. So they'll get almost 4,000 in GAM. So that's a really good thing. Now, GAM can also be traded, unlike TAM. It's time to talk about guaranteed contracts. A guaranteed contract is basically a contract that will guarantee the player gets paid no matter what happens. If you release him or waive him, he's still going to get paid because it's guaranteed. Doesn't matter if he clear waivers, or whatnot, he's going to get paid. Now, if another team picks him up, or if another country signs him, then that contract is void and you don't have to worry about it. Okay, but that's what a guaranteed contract is. It just guarantees that no matter what happens, the player is going to get paid. Stay away from them if you can. Now, you can also add this as a clause in contracts, but they have to be senior and above. So in other words, Generation Adidas, Reserve, and SMS, you can't do that. And it's a clause right here under your clauses that you can add. I don't recommend it. It's a pain in the butt. No reason for that. All right. Designated players and under 22 contracts are always guaranteed anyway. Now, after roster guarantee date, contracts all become guaranteed for the rest of the season. So if you decide that you want to waive or release waive somebody by that point, you're going to be responsible for paying them unless they're picked up by another team. So if they clear waivers, you're paying them to sit at home playing, Nintendo, or Xbox, as I prefer. Make sure you check your registration rules. The dates change each year, but for 2023, it's always the same. I'm going to talk more about that in just a bit. Hopefully you remembered that screen that I had on the image just a little bit ago about the dates, but if you don't, check your competition rules and registrations because this is very important. Okay, I'm going to talk about the MLS rules and registration. Roster compliance date. It's in 2023, it's March 4th. This is the date that you must register your roster for the upcoming season. You have to be compliant. That means that, and February 18th is actually in 2023 the first day you can register your squad, but that's not the final registration. Okay, you have a lot of leeway. All right, but by compliance date, you have to have all greens. If you can't register your team by this date, you're going to lose players. The game will just randomly waive players. Okay, so that's why you should constantly be checking since February 18th on what you can do with players. Okay, now you can still add players if you have the space. You can move players to the B team. You can send players out on loan. You can recall players. You can waive players. Pay attention to your cap hit if they have a guaranteed contract. All right, but you can do a lot of things to your roster still, but you have to be compliant at that point. Now, if you have 28 players on your team and you have an incoming transfer coming in 2 months from there, because they turned 18, as long as you have the spot, you can still register them. Okay? Now, roster guarantee date in 2023 is July 9th. What this is, all MLS contracts are now guaranteed. You don't have to do anything additional, but you're going to get a note that says, we now passed the roster guarantee date. All MLS contracts are now guaranteed, even reserve contracts. You can still add players if you have the space. You can still move players to the B team. You can send players out on loan. We call them from loan. You can waive them. Once again, pay attention to the cap. All right. Now, roster freeze date is another big one. In 2023, it's September 15th. And once again, these dates change every year. The reason that they freeze it is because it's for the playoffs. The roster basically is locked. You can no longer add players to your roster from that point. So if you're sitting at 25 players, you can't add any more past this date. So what I'd recommend, if you're sitting at 25 players, go to your B team and see if you can actually add more players or register them, and you'll be good, because you always want to have a full roster when you hit the playoffs because of injuries and everything else. Players must be registered to play in the MLS Cup, the playoffs, okay? And this includes players on the disabled list. If you have a player that's going to be coming back off the disabled list, say September 20th, go ahead and register him, okay? That way you'll be sure to have him during the playoffs, okay? But anyway, guys, this takes care of part 3, allocation money, different rules for registration and roster, and then guaranteed contracts. So stay tuned. I'm going to have more where this is coming from. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for the support. Like, comment, subscribe. Definitely comment. If you have questions to ask, I'm going to try to get on them as quick as I can. Sometimes I can't, but I try. Anyway, thanks again, guys, and I'll see you at the next one.